It is 3 in the morning. The fire has gone out. The temperature outside is minus 25 degrees Celsius. Your children are shivering under animal skins. Your food supply is half of what you needed. And spring is still 4 months away. This is not a scene from a horror film. This was Tuesday. For millions of people across medieval Europe and Asia, this was simply winter. We live in a world where we turn a dial and the room gets warm, where supermarkets stay stocked even in the middle of a blizzard, where the worst part of winter for most of us is a cold morning commute. Medieval people had no central heating, no insulated windows, no electric blankets, no weather apps warning them what was coming. And yet, communities in Scandinavia, Russia, the Scottish Highlands, the Swiss Alps, and the frozen steppes of Central Asia not only survived the most brutal winters on Earth, they built entire civilizations inside them. But here's what nobody talks about. Some of what they knew, we have completely forgotten. And that forgotten knowledge might be more powerful than anything modern science has given us. So what did they actually know? To understand how medieval people survived winter, you first need to understand exactly how brutal those winters actually were. And this is where most people get it completely wrong. We tend to imagine the Middle Ages as a distant, vague period of time. Cold, yes. Difficult, sure. But what historians and climate scientists have discovered in recent decades completely changes that picture. Between the years 1300 and 1850, the Earth experienced what scientists now call the Little Ice Age. Temperatures across the northern hemisphere dropped by 1 to 2 degrees Celsius on average. That might sound small, but that single degree meant rivers that never froze solid. Harvests that once fed entire villages failed completely. The Baltic Sea, one of the largest bodies of water in Europe, froze over multiple times. The Thames River in London froze so completely that people held full winter festivals directly on the ice. This wasn't occasional cold weather. This was a centuries-long climate shift that reshaped how entire societies functioned. And the people living through it had no idea why it was happening. No satellites, no scientists, no explanation. Just a world that kept getting colder, and a choice between adapting or dying. But here's the twist. Different cultures responded in completely different ways. And some of those responses were so ingenious, so unexpectedly sophisticated, that modern engineers have actually studied them. What did they figure out that we still haven't fully understood? Let's travel. Because the story of medieval winter survival is not one story, it's many. And each one is more fascinating than the last. Start in Scandinavia. In medieval Norway and Sweden, winters lasted up to 7 months. Darkness was total. For weeks, the sun never rose above the horizon. Temperatures regularly hit minus 30 degrees Celsius. And yet Norse communities didn't just endure this. They engineered around it with remarkable precision. Their homes, called longhouses, were architectural masterpieces of insulation. Walls were packed with turf and moss, natural materials that trapped heat with an efficiency that modern builders have actually tested and respected. Animals were deliberately kept inside the same structure as the family, not out of laziness, but because a single cow produces roughly the same heat as a small electric radiator. Medieval Norwegians understood thermal mass before the word even existed. Now move east, into medieval Russia. Here the solution was underground. Russian peasants built semi-subterranean homes called zemlyankas, structures dug partially into the earth, where ground temperature stays naturally stable even when the surface freezes completely. The earth itself became the insulator. And then there's the food question, because staying warm means nothing if you're starving. Medieval communities developed fermentation, salting, smoking, and root cellaring into near-perfect preservation systems. Some Russian villages stored enough food in underground cellars to last 8 full months. This is where things get strange. These weren't primitive guesses. These were calculated, tested, generational solutions. So why did we forget them? Here is where the story takes a turn that most people never expect. For centuries, historians described medieval winter life as desperate, miserable, a constant battle against death. And yes, winters were brutal. People did die. Famines happened. Entire villages were lost. That part is true. But buried inside old manuscripts, village records, and archaeological discoveries is a picture that tells a completely different story, one that modern researchers are only now beginning to piece together. Medieval people didn't just survive winter. For many communities, winter was actually their most socially rich season of the entire year. Think about it. Summer meant backbreaking labor, planting, harvesting, maintaining, building. There was no rest. But winter forced stillness. And inside that stillness, something remarkable happened. Communities gathered, stories were told, skills were passed down from grandparents to grandchildren beside fires that burned for months. In medieval Iceland, winter was the primary season for the great sagas, epic oral histories that preserved entire cultures through storytelling. In alpine communities, winter evenings were dedicated to collective craftwork, music, and what historians now call the spinning bee, communal gatherings where people worked together, sang together, and kept each other psychologically alive through the darkness. And here's the hidden truth that modern science has now confirmed. Social connection during winter months directly reduces cortisol levels, strengthens immune response, and measurably increases survival rates in cold climates. Medieval people didn't discover this in a laboratory. They discovered it through thousands of years of living. They knew something we are only beginning to relearn. So let's pause here for a moment, because what we've uncovered so far isn't just fascinating history. It's a mirror, and what it reflects back at us is deeply uncomfortable. We are the most technologically advanced civilization in human history. We have smart thermostats, heated car seats, climate-controlled offices, and same-day grocery delivery in the middle of a snowstorm. By every measurable standard, we are more protected from winter than any generation that ever lived. And yet, rates of loneliness in the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia have reached what health officials are now calling epidemic levels. Winter depression affects an estimated 10 million Americans every single year. Studies show that modern people are spending less time in genuine community, less time in meaningful conversation, and less time in the kind of deep human connection that medieval villages built their entire winter survival strategy around. Have you ever wondered why winter feels heavier now than it should? Why the cold months feel isolating even when you're physically comfortable? Medieval communities in the Scottish Highlands had a concept called clashan, tight clusters of families who shared resources, warmth, stories, and responsibility for one another. No one faced winter alone. That wasn't sentimentality. That was survival strategy. Modern science now confirms what they practiced instinctively. Human connection is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity, especially in winter, especially in darkness. Comment below. When was the last time you spent a winter evening in genuine conversation with someone, completely away from a screen? The medieval answer to winter wasn't just fire and food, it was each other. We started this journey in the freezing darkness of a medieval morning. No heating, no forecast, no guarantee of survival. And what we found inside that darkness was something completely unexpected. We found intelligence, we found ingenuity, we found communities that turned the most hostile season on Earth into something meaningful, something connective, something almost sacred. Medieval Norwegians built homes that breathed with the earth. Russian peasants dug into the ground and let nature itself become their shelter. Scottish Highlanders clustered together and shared everything: warmth, food, stories, grief. Icelandic communities transformed months of darkness into some of the greatest storytelling traditions the world has ever known. Alpine villagers gathered every evening not just to work, but to remind each other that they were not alone. None of them had what we have, and in some ways, they had everything we've lost. Here is the truth that this entire story has been building toward. Survival was never just about temperature. It was never just about food storage or insulated walls or burning the right kind of wood. At its deepest level, medieval winter survival was about one thing: refusing to face the darkness alone. And that lesson doesn't belong to the Middle Ages. It belongs to right now, to this winter, to the people sitting inside warm houses on glowing screens, feeling somehow colder than they should. The medieval world is gone, But what it understood about human beings, about our need for fire, for food, for community, for meaning, that has never changed. Not once, not in 1,000 years. Maybe the real question isn't how they survived winter. Maybe the real question is, are we?